People say a new house holds new memories, but nobody warns that some walls already remember other people's pain. Tonight, listen closely and don't move from your seat. Because if this story ends and something in your room keeps going, if footsteps keep walking after the last word, do not look behind you. Maya and Aaron had worked hard for this house. Years of small apartments, late night shifts, and awkward dinners with family who kept asking, "When will you finally settle down?" The house was their answer. 3 bedrooms, a small yard, and a porch that creaked with a soft voice, like an old friend trying to whisper a secret without waking anyone up. They moved in on a rainy Thursday. The clouds hung low and heavy like wet blankets over the neighborhood. The place felt quiet. Every other house looked closed up and shy. The real estate agent had been charming and quick, almost too quick with answers. No issues with the foundation. Yes, recent renovations. Yes, safe neighborhood. Absolutely. No history that should concern you. That phrasing stuck like a splinter. That should concern you. Maya didn't want to seem paranoid. She told herself to focus on the good things. The smell of paint, the shine on the kitchen floor, the cool feeling of tile under bare feet. New beginnings. But her palms wouldn't stop sweating. Her heart would speed up when she walked past the narrow hallway near the stairs. It felt too long for the size of the house, like something had stretched space just enough to make the corridor feel like a throat. Aaron pulled down boxes from the truck, smiling the way people smile when they finally hold something they dreamed about for a long time. He whistled a tune she didn't recognize. "We did it," he said. "We're finally here." He kissed her forehead. She wanted to feel safe in that kiss. She wanted to believe the house would love them back. That first night, they didn't have curtains yet. The bedroom window was a rectangle of dark gray sky. Rain tapped softly, then harder, as if the night tried to speak in Morse code. There was no furniture in the living room, just a camping mattress set on the floor and a folded blanket. The house made little settling noises, wood moving inside itself, the refrigerator humming, a pipe taking a breath and letting it go. Ordinary things, almost enough to make the fear feel silly. Somewhere between midnight and 1, Maya woke to a sound that wasn't ordinary. Footsteps, far away, then closer. Heel-to, then the smallest drag. Heel-to, drag, the shape of a tired walk. She felt Aaron's arm around her waist tighten, then loosen. He was still asleep. Maya sat up slowly. The house was dark. She could see the hallway from their open bedroom door, a long, straight mouth lined with black doorways. She waited to hear the footsteps again. Rain on the window, a car far away. Then silence. She lay back down, told herself it was nothing. Her fear felt like a childish thing she needed to hide from Aaron, who believed in sturdy things, locks, light bulbs, new paint. Logical answers. At 1:47 a.m., the bedroom door closed on its own. It didn't slam. It moved like a careful hand guiding it across the carpet. Maya sat up again, heart kicking like a trapped rabbit. The door clicked shut with a polite sound. She said Aaron's name in a whisper. He didn't move. The air felt thick, as if someone had just walked by and the room had to settle around the shape they left behind. Maya got up and turned the doorknob. It wouldn't move. She turned harder. It refused. She felt a pulse in her wrist, and a hot spark of anger sliced through the fear. "Aaron," she said louder. He woke, confused, then alert. He tried the knob too. "It stuck," he said. "Maybe the frame is swollen from the rain." He put his full weight into it. On the third try, the door jerked open, and Maya stumbled back. The hallway looked empty. They laughed, because sometimes that's easier than screaming. He kissed her cheek. "New house things," he said. "We'll sand the door edge tomorrow." That night, they both dreamed of the same room, a small square room with no windows. A single light bulb hanging from a wire, the walls painted the color of dirty teeth. Something scratched from the inside, leaving faint cuts like little white roots just below the paint. They did not tell each other about this dream the next morning. They did not know they had shared it. On the second day, Maya opened a box labeled books and found something she didn't pack. A photograph. It was faded and hot to the touch, like it had been waiting under a lamp. The picture showed the hallway of their house, but not quite the same. The ceiling was lower, and the floor had older boards. At the end of the hall stood a door that didn't exist in their home. In the corner, a blurry figure hunched, small shoulders, long hair. The face was turned away, but even in the blur, She could feel the heaviness of someone who had learned to make themselves small. Maya wanted to throw the picture away, but it felt wrong to do it without Aaron knowing. She slid it back into the box and said nothing. That evening, a neighbor came by with a pie, the way neighbors do in stories. The woman was about 50, with alert eyes and a nervous way of standing as if she was ready to run. She said her name was Ruth and asked if they needed anything. Aaron thanked her, chatty and open. Maya watched Ruth's eyes scan the house. Ruth's smile trembled when she looked at the hallway. "You'll like it here," she said. "It's quiet," she said, quiet like a question. "Did someone live here before?" Maya asked. Ruth nodded. "A couple. They left suddenly. I think his job changed." The lie was too smooth. It slid off Ruth's tongue and fell onto the floor between them with a soft, wet sound. Ruth swallowed and tried again. "If you ever hear, it's an old house. It makes noises." "What kind of noises?" Maya asked. "Old house noises," Ruth said, too quickly, which proved she knew the other kind. That night, Maya woke to a whisper. Not words, just the shape of a person trying to speak with lungs full of cold water. She sat up and reached for the lamp. It didn't turn on. Aaron turned his light on. It worked. "Bulb's out," he said. The whisper pulled her attention to the hallway again. She stepped closer to the doorway. The darkness felt like fabric. She could almost feel its weave against her cheeks. Heel, toe, drag. It was closer this time. A careful, practiced rhythm. Something too tired to lift its foot all the way. Maya understood the sound in her bones. This was someone coming home late. This was someone trying to be quiet for someone who hurt them if they weren't. She said hello, soft and terrified. The footsteps stopped. The quiet felt like a held breath. Then the smallest sound, like a finger sliding along the wall. Maya's mouth went dry. She remembered the dream, the light bulb on a wire, the scratches. She dreamed the room again. This time there was something else. A small chain on the floor, a folded piece of paper in the corner with a drawing in childish lines, a square, a door, a stick figure with long hair. Under it the words, "Sorry I'm loud." In the morning, Maya told Aaron everything. He tried to laugh it off, but his laughter sounded thin, like ice that will crack if stepped on. "We're tired," he said. "New house, stress, it's normal to be jumpy." She showed him the photograph. He frowned. Where did this come from? They searched other boxes, found more things that didn't belong to them. A hair ribbon, stained from something that wasn't blood but felt like a memory of it. A metal key with no teeth. A small mirror with a crack across the middle, splitting any face that looked into it. "Maybe the last owners left some junk," Aaron said. "They must have used the same moving company." "Then where did the extra door go?" Maya asked. He stared at the photograph, jaw tight. "Maybe it's another house." They went to the end of the hallway. On the right, a linen closet. On the left, the bathroom. At the end, the wall. Blue paint, new looking. Maya pressed her palm to it. It felt colder than the other walls. She realized they had never measured the rooms. The floor plan in the listing had been neat and simple, but the house felt like it hid small spaces, the way a body hides breath in the lungs, moving it silently between places. That afternoon, Ruth rang again, pretending to bring them a spare trash bin, as if anyone gave away a trash bin on day 2. She looked at their faces and her own face softened. She stepped inside when invited and stared at the end of the hallway. "They covered it," she said so softly that if the house had ears, it would not have heard. "Covered what?" Maya asked. Ruth swallowed. "I don't want to cause trouble. People need fresh starts." She touched the wall with her fingertips, then pulled her hand back quickly, like it had burned her. "It wasn't my business then. Maybe it's not my business now." She took a step backward. "Do not go in there," she said. Then she left, as if something had tugged her away by an invisible string. Aaron wanted to call the previous owners. The number in the file went to a disconnected line. The agent didn't return messages. Evening came down like a lid. At 2:13 a.m., the house began to repeat itself. It started with the front door opening very softly. No footsteps across the threshold, just a breath of cold air. Then the slow, careful walk in the hallway, heel-toe drag. It reached the end of the hall and stopped. Then something pressed on the wall from the other side. Not hard, not violent, just the weight of a person leaning their forehead against it and trying not to cry. Maya stood with her hand over her mouth and tears in her eyes. She felt a desperate, protective grief, like she was hearing the past ask for help and arriving too late. Aaron put his arm around her. "It's just the wind," he said, but he was shaking. "It's just pipes." But pipes do not lean their sadness against walls. "Say something," Maya whispered. "Please say something," a voice answered. Not from the hallway, from inside their bedroom closet. "Not tonight. He's awake." The voice was young, female. It had the flat, careful tone of someone who had learned how to speak without making a sound carry. Aaron moved in front of Maya. He opened the closet. There was no one there, just their clothes, their boxes, their shoes. The air smelled like cold soap and old wood, but the voice had been real. It had been too used to not being believed. Maya spoke into the closet as if it were a face. "Do you need help?" Silence. Then quietly, "I tried to be good." The next day, they bought a stud finder and a sledgehammer. Aaron shook his head, trying to be rational. "We're not smashing our new house," he said. "We need a plan." But the house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting for them to act. Maya took the hammer first and tapped lightly along the end wall. Hollow, hollow, then a different sound, a thick, soft thud, a place where the wall had been moved forward to hide something behind it. They marked the spot, cut carefully. The blue paint crumbled at the edges, revealing older layers beneath like tree rings, beige, yellow, a color that might have been white once. Under that, a layer of paper with faded flowers. Under that, a seam. They pulled back part of the drywall. Behind it, exactly where it shouldn't be, was a door. It was shorter than a normal door, as if made for someone who ducked often. The handle was old and round. The keyhole was a small mouth. Maya felt cold rise up from the floor into her legs. Aaron swore under his breath, a small sound of fear dressed up as frustration. "This is insane," he said. "They sealed a room?" "Don't open it," Maya said, though she wanted to. She wanted to open it with her teeth. That night, the house let them choose. At 1:58 a.m., the footsteps came. "Heel to Drac." They stopped at the hidden door. They waited. The air was full of something like hope, but not healthy hope. The kind that hurts because it's almost too late. "Tomorrow," Maya said. She spoke to the darkness as if there were a listening child inside it. "Tomorrow we open it." At dawn, they did. The door had no key, but it had been sealed from the outside, then disguised with paint and drywall. They took their time. When the door finally swung inward, the smell that came out was not rot. It was something worse. It was the smell of laundry that never fully dried, of breath caught under blankets too thick to breathe through, of fear ground into plaster. The small room looked exactly like the dreams. Square, no window. A light bulb on a wire. The walls showed hundreds of faint scratches, not the wild marks of a trapped animal, but careful tally marks. Steady, determined. A child counting days. On the floor, a thin mattress and a folded paper. Maya picked up the paper with hands that shook so hard the edges rattled. It was the same drawing from the dream, a square room, a door, a stick figure with long hair. But this time there was another drawing next to it, a bigger figure, shoulders like a wall. And a third drawing, small and bent as if ashamed. Above the figures, a single word. "Sorry." Aaron leaned against the hallway wall, staring at the mattress. His eyes were wet. "Someone did this," he said, voice breaking. "Someone did this here." Maya touched the tally marks with her fingertips. She could feel the grooves. She could feel the sharp little hurt where the tool, maybe a hairpin, maybe a coin, had dug into the paint again and again. Not a scream painted in blood. Not a dramatic horror. A quiet one. A private one. The kind nobody believes if the walls don't speak. The house spoke. That night, the repetition changed. The front door still opened softly. The footsteps still moved down the hall. But when they reached the open door of the small room, the footsteps paused, uncertain. Then a whisper, "Is it morning?" Maya stood in the hallway with the light on. "It's morning," she said, even though it was dark. "It's morning now." Something passed through her, the feeling of a small body moving carefully around her, keeping distance, ready to run if necessary. Then the light bulb in the small room flickered on by itself, even though no power line was connected anymore. The bulb burned steady for a long while, warm and gentle, as if a hand cupped it to protect it from drafts. They called the police. They told the truth. The police were polite and serious. They took photographs. They made calls. No missing persons matched. No case files came up. The last owners were unreachable. The report was filed. The officers left with their official voices and their careful faces. Ruth watched from her porch, mouth pressed thin. That night, she left a note on their step. "You did the right thing. I am sorry I didn't." The next week was quiet. The smell in the small room faded. The house felt lighter, as if it had exhaled for the first time in years. Maya started putting fresh paint on the hallway. She painted over the bruise-colored blue with a softer shade. Every brushstroke felt like telling a story to a scared child. It's different now. It won't be the same. On a Saturday morning, Aaron found another piece of paper, thin as skin, slipped under the bedroom door. It was a drawing again, but this time the stick figure with long hair stood outside the square. She held a small circle that might have been a sun. Above her, 2 words, "Thank you." They kept the door to the small room open. They put a lamp inside. They brought fresh flowers once, then decided it was too much like a grave. They didn't want it to be a grave. They wanted it to be a proof of survival, of rescue, of the way a house can be cruel and then be kind again. But houses that learn how to repeat do not forget how. Months later, on a windy night when the power flickered and came back, Maya woke to the old pattern, the front door opening without a sound, the careful walk, heel-toe drag, the pause at the end of the hall, the lean of a forehead against the wall. She sat up quickly and turned on the lamp. "It's open," she said. "You can come out." "It's open," a voice answered. Not a child's this time. A man's voice, rough, low, taut by anger. "Not for me," it said from somewhere very close. For me, it never opened. The lamp went out. The hallway swallowed its own light. The small room door swung shut as if pulled by a strong arm. The house held its breath again, but this time it was not waiting. It was hiding. Aaron woke when Maya grabbed his arm hard enough to bruise. They stood together in the dark, listening. Something moved in the small room. Something heavier, taking the same careful steps but without the drag, like a person who had learned to lift their feet when they wanted to be silent. The air changed again. It grew crowded, full of the heat that rises from a person who is very angry and very patient. Maya understood then that not all the house's repetitions belonged to the child. Some belonged to the other figure in the drawing. The one with shoulders like a wall. They left that night. Left the mattress, the lamp, the fresh paint still drying in the hall. They closed the front door as gently as it had always closed itself. They drove to a motel and slept under a noisy air conditioner, where the noise felt clean because it had no memory. Later, they would sell the house. The agent would say the market was hot. The buyers would be young and hopeful, just like they had been. Maya would look at them and want to warn them, but warnings are the kind of kindness that people don't accept if they've never needed it yet. The inspection would pass. The door in the wall would be sealed again by someone who liked their lines neat. Before they left for good, Maya went back one last time, alone. She stood in the small room and turned on the lamp. She whispered, "It was open. It is open for you." The room was quiet. Then, from far down the hallway where the wall had once been, came the softest sound, a single finger sliding along the paint. Not a threat, a reminder. Some houses repeat until someone changes the story. Some houses repeat even after. If tonight ends and footsteps start in a hallway that is not yours, do not pretend it is the pipes. You know this rhythm now. Heel, two, drag. If a voice says, "Not for me," answer with truth you can live with. Answer with a door that stays open, even if it costs you your sleep. Because somewhere, someone is still counting marks on a wall in the dark, and the house they're in does not know how to stop. They called it the baby room, even though there was no baby yet. Just a white crib with a soft blanket and a mobile that turned on its own when the window was closed. Mia and Ethan had painted the walls a soft yellow because yellow felt like sunshine they could control, and they needed that after the past year of hospital waiting rooms and quiet rides home. They told each other this house would be their restart, their place to breathe between bad news and the next day, the place where tiny hope could grow legs and learn to walk. On move-in day, the baby room made them both cry, but the good kind. The kind that isn't a flood but a spring. They stood in the doorway holding hands, imagining a small person who would one day kick at the bars and laugh when the mobile clicked. The sound like little teeth tapping a glass. The mobile's animals were sewn with old fabric Mia had found at a yard sale. faded blue whales with yellow stitches and red eyes that were almost brown. She liked to touch each whale and whisper a wish she kept small on purpose, as if large wishes scared easily. Ethan set down the last box and the crib sighed, not because anyone touched it, but because wood sighs when it remembers something heavy. They both heard it and both said nothing, which is how two people agree to ignore the same strange thing for the same good reason. The first night, a room was missing. It wasn't the baby room. It was the guest room, the one down the hall, the one they had left the door open to so the paint could dry. Mia went to hang a sweater and walked into a wall where a door had been. Flat. Smooth yellow paint. No seam, no trim, no knob. Wrong hall, Ethan said. And then he saw the same flat place and the smile left his face. Not angry, not scared, just gone, like it had stepped out to make a call. They laughed because laughter puts a rug over a hole. Old house, Mia said. Weird corners. They went to bed early because the day had been a mouthful. In the middle of the night, the mobile turned. The whales spun slow and then faster. The red eyes like little coals, shadows swimming the yellow walls. Mia woke without knowing why and listened to the small, ticking sound the mobile made at each quarter. Turn. She listened until the ticking began to spell something in her. Bones, mom, mom, mom. She sat up, heart stumbling, and put her feet on the floor, which was warm. The baby room smelled like a laundromat a town over, the one her mother had taken her to at night when thunder washed the power out at home. She walked down the hall out. The guest room door was back. She stood there holding the knob that shouldn't exist and felt a kindness she couldn't name and a warning she couldn't hold at the same time. She opened the door. Inside, there was a chair, just a wooden chair facing a corner. A dent in the seat like someone had sat there too long and left a small part of themselves behind. She closed the door and went back to bed, shaking without moving. In the morning, the guest room was a closet. Shallow shelves, neat brackets, no chair, no corner, no dent. Ethan measured the wall with his hands like a man who trusts his fingers more than tape. He said lumber words, under his breath the way some men say prayers. Maybe. I got turned around, he said. Mia nodded and put folded towels on a shelf that hadn't been there yesterday. That day, the house felt friendly. The light fell right in the kitchen. The sink water ran clear and hot like it had been waiting for them. Mia hummed while she wiped the counter. The mobile clicked from the baby room. She went to check and found one whale, missing, just the string. Bare and turning, she searched the floor, the crib, the hall, her apron pocket like maybe she had stolen from herself. Nothing. That night, a different room went missing. The bathroom, they laughed until they didn't. There was the smell of mint from a tube that had nowhere to live. They brushed their teeth at the kitchen sink like kids on a road. Trip, old house, Ethan said again. But the words felt like a code on a day that had turned hotter than the forecast. The baby room door was open when they went to bed. Mia closed it gently, 2 fingers on the edge like a promise. In the dark, the mobile began to click, slow, then steady, then spelling again. Mom, mom, this time. Another word found its way into the spaces between clicks. Stay, Mia whispered into her pillow. I'm here. And heard her mother's voice answer from a place that wasn't the room and wasn't a dream and wasn't the past. A place that felt like a hand on her ankle when she was a kid and afraid to jump into a pool. The next morning, the whales were all missing, just strings, turning. In their place, on the wall over the crib, someone had hung small paper shapes, hearts cut from newspaper, each with a word circled in red pen. Hold, keep still. Mia didn't scream and she didn't cry. She felt a weight shift inside her, like a chair moving in a quiet room. She called Ethan and they stood in the doorway together. Who would do this? He asked, but the way he said who sounded like he already knew the answer was not a person. They took the hearts down and put them in a drawer. They left the strings empty. That afternoon, Ethan went to the hardware store because getting new hooks felt like a way to fix a thing too big to be fixed. Mia stayed home and sorted tiny clothes that were still only wishes. The baby room felt a degree warmer than the rest of the house. She stood in the doorway and pictured a small hand. Then she saw it. Not a hand, a small print. On the crib rail, oil from skin, 5 ghost ovals, smudged like a rainy day fingerprint. She reached to wipe it and felt heat under her palm, not hot like a stove, hot like a forehead. "Okay," she said out loud to the empty room, because sometimes talking to a thing makes it choose to be less strange. "What do you want?" A door clicked somewhere else in the house, the guest room again. She walked there and found it was a bathroom this time. The mirror fogged, a wet towel draped over the tub like someone had just stepped out and left in a hurry. On the mirror, 5 letters drawn with a finger, N-O-T-Y-E-T. Not yet. She wiped the words away with the towel and tasted metal in the air. She wanted to run, and she wanted to sit in the baby room and never move again. When Ethan came home, the house had all its rooms in the right places, as if nothing had ever shifted. He held a bag of new hooks and a drill, and the look men get when they want to fix what is not broken but is wrong. She showed him the fingerprints with her words. Because they were gone from the wood, he listened, without laughing. That night, they slept with the lamp on. The light made a thin, brave circle on the ceiling. Sometime around 2, Ethan sat up. He didn't know why. He reached out and found Mia's hand already reaching. The mobile clicked. In the hall, something soft walked, not feet, the weight of a room moving. The house shifted, polite, like someone sliding past in a theater row. The baby room door opened with a sound like a small breath. They both went. Inside, on the floor, the missing whales lay in a circle, red eyes up, strings tucked under like sleeping tails. In the middle of the circle sat a cardboard box. It was the size of a shoebox, taped tight, an old shipping label turned soft by time. On the top, written in pencil that had faded and then been gone over, the word 4. They looked at each other. Mia opened the box with a butter knife because a butter knife is honest. Inside were baby things that belonged to someone else in a decade that had turned sepia. A hat with a little knot. A pair of socks that could fit in a matchbox, a silver rattle gone dull, a photo of a crib in a room that looked like their room, except the wallpaper had flowers, and the light from the window fell from the other side. On the back of the photo, 4 words, "Hold her for me." The air in the room thickened, sweet and sad, and Mia felt it catch in her throat the way a story catches when it gets to the part that still hurts. She put the hat to her cheek and it felt warm. The mobile strings moved. A tiny draft touched her wrist. She said, without planning it, "We will." The next day, the house behaved. Every room where it belonged. The guest room was a guest room with a window that showed a tree. The bathroom was a bathroom with a mirror that kept its words to itself. The baby room was the warmest room in the house. Mia sat there and mended one of the whales, stitching its mouth closed where it had come loose, her fingers steady for the first time in months. Ethan read instructions about crib safety out loud, and the words sounded like spells in a good language. In the afternoon, their neighbor knocked, an older woman with a careful smile and a pie she held like an apology. "I used to babysit in this house," she said. "I don't mean to be rude, but the room at the end of the hall, does it ever feel warmer?" Mia and Ethan told her the truth, but not all of it, because some truths are better in pieces. The neighbor put the pie on the counter and looked toward the baby room like a person might look toward a church they haven't entered in years. She was 5 months, the neighbor said to the air. Her mother had to work nights back then. "I would rock her and sing the same song until my voice went sand. When she got sick, it was fast." They said it was no one's fault, but the room didn't let her go for a while. It kept being warm. Mia's hands shook and then went still. Ethan put his hand over hers. The neighbor touched the doorframe with 2 fingers. She was loved. "Here," the neighbor said. "That matters." After the neighbor left, the house felt quiet in a way that didn't demand anything. Mia sat in the rocker and rocked without a baby, and it felt like practice and memory at the same time. She whispered, "We will hold her for you," and the mobile turned once, a small, grateful nod. That night, Mia dreamed of walking through the house holding a weight close to her chest. In the dream, rooms stepped aside to make room for her. Polite little shifts like a friend letting someone pass with a sleeping child. She woke with wet cheeks and the feeling of a small, warm head under her chin. She went to the baby room and stood in the doorway, and the room stood back, as if a room could stand. On the crib rail, the 5 small ovals were back, brighter, like someone had pressed a soft hand to say thank you. In the weeks that followed, the house kept its tricks small. A door that used to stick didn't stick. A draft turned warm by the time it reached the baby room. When Mia cried into a dish towel, the towel dried fast as if the air was helping. When Ethan's hands shook while he tried to install the new hooks, the drill found the stud without hunting. Sometimes a room went missing for an hour, but it wasn't frightening anymore. It was like a shy animal coming and going, showing itself only to the hands that fed it. The mirror wrote, "Not yet one more time," on a day Mia wanted to quit trying. And instead of fear, she felt a strange relief, like someone had hung a "Do Not Disturb" sign on her sadness. They put the silver rattle on the shelf. They kept the lettered hearts in the drawer. They mended every wale and hung them back. Their red eyes faded to kind brown in a different light. Months later, when the test finally showed 2 lines like a tiny road, the baby room went very quiet and very warm. A hush that felt like a hand on a door and a voice saying, "Come in." Mia sat on the floor and laughed and cried and laughed, again while Ethan held her shoulders and counted, wails to keep from falling over. The mirror in the bathroom fogged without water, and a single word wrote itself slow enough to watch, "Ready." The neighbor brought more pie and cried with them at the sink the way some people cry at altars. That night, the mobile turned once and stopped with all the wails looking inward, as if they were watching over a circle no one else could see. Mia slept with one hand on the crib rail and dreamed of a small warm head under her chin and a larger, older warmth in the walls around her. The soft press of a house that had learned how to love by refusing to forget. In the morning, the guest room was a guest room, the bathroom was a bathroom, and the baby room smelled like spring after rain, the kind of smell that makes people open windows and believe in what they can't see yet. The first time Nora stepped on the 13th stair, it counted out loud. Not in numbers but in breaths, 3 small exhales right under her foot, like someone hiding there trying not to be found. She froze, one hand on the railing that felt warm, as if a palm had just left it. The house smelled like rain inside wood, a scent that made her think of closets and secrets and sweaters kept too long because they held someone's shape. She did not move. She listened until the breaths faded into the quiet that houses use when they're paying attention. Nora had not planned to live alone. But life, with its crooked handwriting and poor aim, had left her in a place where silence was easier to pick up than a phone. She chose the house because the porch felt like it would forgive her mistakes, and because the staircase looked like a spine running through a body, upright and brave. On move-in day, she whispered to the banister without meaning to, a small apology for the boxes that bumped and the boots that scuffed. The wood hummed a little, not a sound, more a feeling, as if the house understood that apologies are another way of saying please. The staircase had 14 steps from the entry to the landing. She counted them the way children do, tapping the top of each one with the inside edge of her foot. 12, 13, 14. The 13th was darker, a shade deeper like a bruise under a shirt. Not a trick of light. Not a stain, just a depth to the wood grain that made it look like the stair had learned something the others had not. That night, when the house settled and the town quieted and the refrigerator clicked through its tiny cycles of effort, Nora heard the breaths again. 3, soft, from the 13th step, as if the wood itself was remembering something that required a gentle mouth. She started skipping the 13th without telling herself she was doing it. Her hips learned the reach, her hand learned the extra grip on the railing, her body remembered to forget. But houses do not like to be stepped around. On the 3rd morning, she came down with coffee and a list and a determination to learn where the best light fell in which room at which hour. And the 13th stair creaked not under her, but behind her, one soft groan like a person realizing a truth in a sentence. She turned. Nothing there. The air over the stair looked thicker, like breath fog on a cold day, and then it thinned. She set the coffee on the landing, reached down, and touched the dark grain with her fingertips. It was warm. It pulsed once, the way a bird's heart does when held. Nora sat on the landing and looked at the wall where someone, long ago, had drawn tiny marks in pencil at different heights, each with a date. Children's inches, stubborn hope measured against a doorframe. She traced a mark with her nail and the graphite caught light and turned shiny. Her vision blurred. She had not come here to cry. She had come here to try again. The house, which had been holding its breath, exhaled. The breath came up through the 13th stair and crossed her knees like warm water. She laughed at herself, the small, surprised laugh people use when they find out the strange thing is kind. The house had rules. She learned them the way neighbors learn each other through the ritual of trash day and borrowed sugar. Don't leave a light on in the front hall past midnight. Unless the window over the sink is also lit. Don't put keys on the newel. Post. Use the bowl by the door or they will slide off at 3 in the morning and make a sound like a dropped secret. And always, always touch the 13th stair with an open hand when going up the first time each day. If she forgot, the step counted backward. Not breaths. 3 little tacks, like a metronome on a low shelf. And then her day felt tilted. Pictures not quite straight on the inside walls of her head. On the 7th day, she found something tucked under the lip of the 13th stair. A folded paper, worn thin, edges soft as cloth. She slid it free with 2 careful fingers. Inside were 4 names written in different hands. Rosie, Ben, Mama, me. The me was printed in big letters, square and sure. A child's insistence that the self is as important as anyone else. Beneath the names, a small drawing of the stairs, each step a crooked rectangle, the 13th shaded in darker pencil. She looked for a date and found none. On the back, 1 sentence. Don't skip me. Nora stood there, the paper trembling slightly because her fingers were telling the truth her face hadn't caught up to, and she felt the house listening to whether she would obey. Okay, she said, out loud to the wood and the dust and the old warmth. Okay. She set the paper on the newel post and then remembered the rule and moved it to the bowl, because promises begin with small obedience. She went up, stepping on the 13th with her whole weight. It did not creak. It did not exhale. It simply held her. She felt something in her chest unclench, a muscle she had taught to stay tight. Nora worked from home, which meant the house learned her voice in all its sizes, the low mutter of numbers, the bright tone of calls where she pretended the story was simpler than it was, the small sigh when the sun slid past the perfect angle and work got harder. In the evenings, she read on the landing because the light pooled there the way warm water does in a shallow pan. The 13th stair was under her feet like a heartbeat under a blanket. Sometimes, late, when she had almost fallen asleep in the book and the words blurred into the pattern of the page, the stair would give 3 soft breaths. She would press her toes against its edge and answer with 3 of her own. A conversation without language. Then the house began to count in other ways. In the kitchen, the clock that had stopped at 9 for years, according to the nail shadow and the brighter circle on the paint, started to tick again, but only when she was washing one particular mug. In the bedroom, the fan clicked twice, only when she left the window half open. On the landing, little scuffs appeared on the wall, low down, the kind that come from small shoes. She washed them with a sponge and lemon, and they came back, lighter, like echoes. She bought a rug for the stairs, soft, brown-gray, so the wood could rest. The 13th bulged slightly where the rug smoothed over it, like a knee under a blanket. One afternoon, a knock came, 2 polite taps and a pause. On the porch stood a man in a uniform that was mostly pockets, and a face like the photograph of a face left on a windowsill, faded in some places, strong in others. He held the envelope thick and tired. "Found this in a forward box that got lost behind a cabinet at the old post office," he said. "Addressed to this house, but the names don't match the current record. Thought someone might want them." He placed the envelope in her hands and saluted the way people salute when they are unsure if it is appropriate but want to be respectful anyway. At the kitchen table, Nora opened the envelope and slid out a stack of papers. School notices, a church program, a crayon drawing of stairs very much like the one she had found, and a letter, handwritten on lined paper, folded into quarters then halves then quarters again, as if someone wanted to make the words smaller so they would be less dangerous. "Dear house," it began. "Thank you for holding us when the sirens were too loud and the nights were too long. Thank you for making the 13th stair warm when Rosie cried and Ben hid. Thank you for counting backward when I wanted to leave and should not. We are going now, not because you failed us, but because we have learned to count forward again. If anyone comes after, please teach them the way you taught us. Love, Mama." Nora pressed the letter flat. The paper smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. She felt the 13th stare like a presence behind her, listening the way a person does when a story mentions their name. She carried the letter to the landing and sat. The stair warmed under her heels. "Teach me," she said, which is what people say when they are ready to let a place work on them. The house settled. Somewhere deep, a slow creak like a big animal adjusting its weight. The breaths came, not 3 this time, but one long, steady exhale that seemed to empty and never run out. After that, the house did something it had not done before. It corrected her. On days when she skipped lunch and lied about it to herself, the 13th stair counted backward until she went to the kitchen. On nights when she almost texted someone who was bad for her and good for the feeling of not being alone, the stair was cold under her bare feet, an honest cold that told the truth about consequences. When she sat on the landing to cry because grief does not care about new addresses or fresh paint, the stair warmed enough to make her bones stop shivering. She learned to say thank you to it, out loud, without feeling foolish. Winter came early, harsh and silver, a season that made the town look like it had been erased and drawn again in a shaky hand. The stairs gathered the cold like a cloak. Only the 13th stayed warm. One night the power went out and the house went very quiet, the kind of quiet that is not empty but full of listening. Nora lit a candle and carried it up. The flame did not flicker on the landing. It stood straight, a small brave column. She set it on the 13th stair. The wax dripped and pooled, and when she lifted the candle, the stair had a new mark, an oval of cooled white, soft at the edges. The stair creaked, pleased, and she had the sudden, absurd sense of a creature purring. In that long dark she heard footsteps. Not in the house, above it. The roof creaked like someone walking very carefully, trying not to wake a sleeping child. She held her breath. The steps reached the top of the roof, paused, and then there was a soft thud, like a hand on wood. The candle flame leaned toward the sound and then stood straight again. In the morning, there were small prints on the snow outside. Not human, not animal she knew, just little ovals like the wax mark, leading from the front steps to the big tree and then disappearing into a patch of sunlight as if the light itself had claimed them. Spring broke the way a fever breaks. With sweat and relief and the need to change the sheets, Nora opened every window and the house breathed in like a swimmer after a long dive. The 13th stair smelled like rain again. On a Saturday, she drove to a thrift store and found a frame that had been painted too many times. She scraped it down to wood and put the Deer House letter behind glass. She hung it on the wall by the landing, just above the pencil marks where someone had been measured. She added one new mark, low, at a height that did not belong to her. She wrote 2 letters beside it, me. Not because she was small, but because the house had made a place for the part of her that still needed to be. That night, she fell asleep on the landing, book open, candle out, the house breathing slow around her. She woke to the sound of a child humming the way children do when they are making stairs safe by filling them with their own noise. She did not open her eyes. She let the humming pass over her like a warm wind. The 13th stair pulsed under her heel in time with the tune. She felt loved by a thing made of wood and nails, and did not find that strange. A month later, the doorbell rang, and life, with its crooked handwriting, tried to write itself back into her story. On the porch stood someone with a smile that had once made her feel chosen, and now made her feel tired. He looked past her into the entry and said, "Nice place." The stair behind her creaked, 3 little breaths. She stepped down onto it, full weight. Warmth climbed her spine. She smiled, kind and firm, the way a person smiles when a boundary is a door that closes gently. "Not today," she said, and meant it. The person sighed and left with the sound of shoes that would not be missed. The house exhaled, long and satisfied. On the anniversary of her move-in, Nora threw a small party and invited exactly 4 people who made her laugh without making her pay for it later. They stood on the landing holding plates and balancing cups and taking turns sitting on the steps the way people always do when chairs run out. Someone said, "This stair is warm," and Nora said, "It's friendly," and everyone accepted that because the food was good and the music was soft and the house felt like a person who had chosen them back. Later, alone, she pressed her palm to the wood and said, "Thank you for counting backward until I could count forward." The stair breathed 3 times, soft and proud. Years from that day, when the walls held new pencil marks and the deer house letter had faded a shade and the wax oval on the 13th had worn to a shine from the bottoms of kind candles, Nora would sit on the landing with a small, brave person and teach them the rules. "Touch this one with your hand," she would say. "It likes to know you're here." The small person would listen, the way houses do, with their whole body, and press a palm to the warm wood. The stair would pulse one beat, and the child would laugh. "It's alive," they would say. "Everything is," Nora would answer, and mean it in the gentlest way. In the end, the house did not haunt. It held, it kept. It counted backward for the broken and forward for the mended, and it knew when to be quiet and when to breathe loud enough to be heard over storms. The 13th stair darkened more with the years, polished by hands that learned to stay. It never asked for anything but a touch and the truth. And in a world that forgets so fast, a warm stare that remembers can be the difference between leaving and arriving. If the 13th stair made a mark on the heart, hit like to remind the algorithm that some houses are listening, subscribe for more true-feeling horror that holds on tight, and ring the bell so the next whisper finds the way home first. Share this with someone who needs a warm light in a dark hallway, and drop a comment. Which rule would the house in the head make for the living?